Oh boy, it is good to be back. Good to be back doing what I do best. Predict the Academy Awards 50% correctly if I'm lucky.
Green Book.
We're back. We're back with Oscar coverage, what you're all here for. I've been waiting for the right time to bring this back, and I know what you're thinking. All of you viewers out there saying it's too early. You know, it's the end of May. We're in the heart of summer movie season. You know, why are you talking about this shit when you should be looking forward to Dora and the Lost City of Gold? And to you I say stop right there. Because you're wrong. This is the perfect time to start talking about Oscar contenders. Not necessarily predictions, but the films that have the potential to be nominated come December and January, right? Chances are, I shouldn't say chances are, but there is the possibility that there's even a film that's already come out by now that will receive a slew of nominations come January. There's always that weird one in February or March, like Black Panther, Grand Budapest Hotel, Get Out, that may have already come out, that we're underestimating right now as we speak. No matter what that may be, we don't know. But there's also always those weird ones that come out in July and August that get a throw in there, and then all of a sudden you're hitting Venice Film Festival, you know, you're hitting TIFF, and then, before you know it, we're in October, and all the movies are coming out. So, right now is the perfect time to be looking forward into October and November and December, and even the film festival like Cannes that we've just had, or films that have already come out. It's time to be looking at these movies and analyzing whether they've been reviewed or not, whether they have the potential, what distributor they're going through, what cast and crew that they have. All of these things are pivotal to look at when you want that advantage into going into your Oscar pool come January. So, this series that I do usually consists of 3 or so videos over the course of a couple of months as the summer goes and as we're about to hit Venice Film Festival. Usually builds to that, and then I start covering the film festivals, but I like to take 4 or 5 different films, quickly analyze each, talk a little bit about each, whether I personally think they have the contention and the potential to be nominated at all of these different awards. So I got 5 today. A couple that I have a little less to talk about, a couple I have a little more to talk about, but they're hot topics right now. There's a lot going on with each of these 5 films, so I wanted to lay it out a little bit, get down a little bit of the foundation of what I'm thinking of. This is not everything that I have on my list. I do have other films I want to talk about in following volumes, but we're gonna jump right into the first 5 here. The first one I want to talk about, and this one is one that I have less to say about, but I think it's an interesting one, is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the biopic that they've said is not really a biopic, but is sort of a biopic that is centering around Fred Rogers being played by Tom Hanks. It's an interesting one because we're coming hot off of the highly discussed snub of Won't You Be My Neighbor in the Best Documentary category, a category that's not often one of the highlights of snubs and surprises, but that film not being in there was easily the biggest, or one of the biggest surprises of last year's nominations when they came out. So we get to start talking about, is it just because they hate Fred Rogers? Did they not like the documentary? And are they going to be looking to redeem themselves now that there is a feature film coming out regarding this topic? It's going to be interestingly structured. It's about a journalist who actually meets up with Fred Rogers. It's about his experiences meeting with Fred Rogers. But the reason I'm interested in talking about it is namely for Tom Hanks. Now, I do, in a sense, think that the film could make it in other categories. I find it interesting to think about the quality of this film. I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. It has Marielle Heller in the director's chair, and she's proven herself a very solid director with The Diary of a Teenage Girl and last year's Can You Ever Forgive Me, which put Melissa McCarthy and Richard E. Grant up for nominations. But the film itself sort of fell short a little bit in terms of being high quality enough to get in like Best Picture or Best Director or Best... oh no, was it in screenwriting? It was in screenwriting. So it managed to find itself in 3 different categories last year, but did fall a little bit short of a Best Director and a Best Picture nom. So she's made a name for herself in the Academy. She sort of cemented herself down there, and now we have to ask the question, she's coming back for another biopic, something a little more lighthearted. And in a way, I think this film is interesting because I almost think it's largely working to propel Tom Hanks forward. I think if he's got a shot at a nomination in any of these last couple of years, it's got to be this one. He's really been working for that thing. He's really been working for that nomination these last couple of years with The Post and Captain Phillips and now this. He really wants it. He's really itching for it. It's been almost 20 years since he's picked up an Oscar nomination, and I think he's gunning for one more before he throws in the towel. I don't know when he's planning on throwing in the towel. It's not like there are plans for that anytime soon, but, you know, I don't know, he's getting up there. Another interesting question for me is whether he would be propelled in lead actor or supporting actor. I don't know if Matthew Rhys would be the one considered to be the lead actor in this film, and then Tom Hanks would be a strong supporting, or what they would campaign him in. I guess it ultimately comes down to what will be the tightest category and where they want to campaign him. But, I mean, he's the titular character. He's playing the iconic character, and if anyone can pull it off, it's obviously going to be Tom Hanks. So the question now becomes, is this role and is this film enough to put him in there? And Marielle Heller last year proved that if the film can be put in very few other places, she can at least direct a couple Oscar-caliber nomination-worthy performances. And we could be looking at a very similar situation here. I have a weird gut feeling that the film is just going to be okay. I don't know exactly, like, how much story there's going to be to tell in this feature film that won't feel like recycled stuff from the documentary, especially if the Academy didn't love the documentary. It'll be interesting to see where else the film falls, but I could kind of see this movie coming down to one of those, like, come see Tom Hanks play Fred Rogers in one of Tom Hanks' best performances in years, and then you see them really, really pushing him up there for a nomination. I don't think he would win, but I think he could be just kind of a guaranteed lock nomination, one of those, but it'll be interesting to see if he can take it this year, considering he really has been campaigning himself a lot in the roles that he's been doing, you know, whether it be playing Disney or Captain Phillips or Ben Bradley. You know, I think he's really trying to garner himself one of those nominations, and if anything is going to take him there, I'm starting to think that it'll be this one. The next film I want to talk about is Little Women, which I honestly think that movie could be a steaming pile of dog shit and they would still nominate it, like, everywhere. Last year there was a lot of discussion about the fact that there were no female directors nominated for Best Director, which, you know, speaking of Marielle Heller, is interesting because there were lots of films that were directed by females that were left out, that many believed were at least high quality enough to be thrown in that category, and yet it was yet again an all-male dominated category. Whether you agree or disagree with that, you know, that the nominees should have been who they were, that's up to you, but I'm talking about strictly factual. We have Greta Gerwig now returning, first film directing and writing since Lady Bird, which received an immense amount of success in terms of nominations at the Academy Awards a couple years ago. And I find it very difficult to believe that a film directed by a woman, written by a woman, starring a massive cast of women that will likely be pretty incredible, is not going to show up at the Academy Awards. It is in that perfect December 25th release date. That's what you like to see out of Oscar films. I assume that'll probably be a limited release at first. You'll see that in New York and LA, and then we'll probably, us other losers, will get it around early January, unless they do decide to wide release on December 25th, which I arguably think would be a better play for them. The more attention that film gets, I think the better it will do at the Oscars, and I think this is a movie that after the success of Lady Bird, the kind of wide success that Lady Bird found, I think people will actually be interested in going to see this movie simply because Gerwig's name is on it. But you're looking at a crazy strong cast. You've got Emma Watson, you've got Meryl Streep, you've got Florence Pugh, you've got Saoirse Ronan, you've got Laura Dern, you've got Chris Cooper, you've got everybody's sweetheart Timothée Chalamet. This film is like a fucking perfect fastball coming in for a home run. I have no idea how this film would not get anywhere. My only concern with it was thinking, like, okay, Gerwig's directing experience doesn't have, like, a kind of period piece, this far of a period piece experience, right? Like, okay, maybe she doesn't know how to handle that, and it's clear that that's not correct, because if you look at her cast and her crew and who she has lined up, she has the production designer on most of the Coen brothers films. She has the costume designer from stuff like Anna Karenina, Darkest Hour, Beauty and the Beast, regular Oscar nominees in their categories. So this is also a movie to be looking for in those kind of technical awards like makeup and hairstyling, costume design, production design, cinematography, all those different places, just next to picture, director, lead actress, supporting actress, maybe even a supporting actor. I don't think there are any lead actors in this film, but this is one you really need to look out for, and you probably really need to see if you want to get around to seeing everything, unless it really flops, which I don't see happening with Gerwig's directorial and writing talent, as she's proven to us. I don't see an instance in which this film doesn't show up fucking everywhere like Lady Bird did, and you definitely need to see it and check out for the reviews when I assume it'll probably come to like TIFF and probably even Venice Film Festival. I'm not 100% sure if I don't think those lineups have been released yet, but it'll probably be there. A big one that we need to lay out there is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino's 9th and newest film, which has been receiving the talk of the town recently. There's been some controversy, but there's also tons and tons of unparalleled excitement for this film that many other movies that are on the release docket for the next couple of months aren't seeing. As I said earlier, there's always one or two summer releases that do pretty well. You know, last year you had something like Black Klansman, and the year before that you had Dunkirk, and then there are, like I said, those earlier ones like Budapest and Get Out. I don't know if we've had one of those yet this year. It won't be Captain Marvel. Like, I know I was in the minority of disliking Black Panther, but Captain Marvel was more disliked by critics and audiences alike. It wasn't nearly as well received. And then, like, Us, I don't see happening. It didn't make nearly as big of a boom as something like Get Out did. So I don't know if there will be a weird February-March one. That's just a side note. But there's always a July/August release in there, and I think this year, the one that, like, any release is terrified of in terms of Oscar potential in the summer is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And then there's always, you know, September, which is Oscar Hell Month. If you come out in September, sorry, but you're fucked. What's interesting about the group of voters of the Academy being much older and, you know, less inclined to go with like stylish, vibrant pieces of film is the fact that they do very often recognize Quentin Tarantino's works, at least his last couple. Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained were both very popular with Academy voters, both getting Christoph Waltz an Oscar. Django Unchained, I believe it was, picking up screenplay, or was that Inglourious Basterds? Yes, it was Django Unchained. Django Unchained picked up original screenplay. And even then, The Hateful Eight, which is one of Tarantino's more divisive films, picked up 3 nominations and a win for score. So his last 3 films have won at least 1 Oscar and been nominated in several other categories. So especially when you have a Palme d'Or nominee now, which has dropped and received rave reviews out of critics and audience members. People are loving this fucking movie. It's another one like Little Women where I don't even see how it wouldn't be placed in a shitload of categories. I think Tarantino could be looking at a director nom, most certainly a screenplay nom, a picture nom, probably editing, cinematography, production design, score even. He usually brings it with score. I didn't mention, I think Little Women has Alexandre Desplat, too, and he's become a very popular Academy pick. Anyway, but you've got, I think, plenty of performances that have the ability to be nominated, with all the recent Margot Robbie controversy, which I think will have, like, ceased to exist by the time not only the film releases, but the fucking Academy Award nominations come out. And even if it is still around, I think worst case scenario, Margot Robbie just gets a supporting actress nomination. I think it only benefits Margot Robbie because I'm sure she's phenomenal in the film. She handled the question professionally, a lot more professionally than Tarantino did. But I think she's got a nom. I think DiCaprio has a nom, and I'm interested to see where they're going to throw Brad Pitt in terms of campaigning. I doubt they would want to campaign him in leading actor with DiCaprio, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get away with nominating him in supporting actor, though recent years have shown you can get away with campaigning any actor anywhere, like Mahershala or Viola, even though they were both like technically leads, but they had better chances in the supporting category, so they put them in there. But I think they might do something similar with Brad Pitt. It'll be interesting to see if any of them can win. I don't think that's out of the question whatsoever. But with the reviews this fucking movie's picking up, and though it didn't win the Palme d'Or, it was clearly a very close runner-up as people are discussing it and as the critic reviews show. I think when it, arrives this summer and it gets even more acclaim, I think it's going to be one that's impact echoes through the coming months for sure. I think it'll be a Golden Globe favorite. I think it'll be a big hit at the Golden Globes and the SAGs. I think the SAGs are going to show some love for the performances, probably ensemble cast as well, and that's just going to keep propelling it through the months and through the rounds of nominations until it eventually hits the Oscars. I think this is a huge one to be looking forward to. Plus, it looks fucking great. So, this is a film for the masses that can be then at the Oscars, and the Oscars like having one for the masses that are in there. I'd also like to talk about The Irishmen, which has been an interesting topic over, like, the past couple of years, really. One that has sort of sat in mystery, kind of chilling in the corner. We finally got that little teaser with the cast names, but that's really all we've heard. It's pretty much guaranteed it's going to be coming out this year. One of my biggest concerns with the film is we don't know when it's going to come out. As far as I know, there is still no set release date. I'm going to double check. Yeah, as far as I know, there's still no release date. It's listed as 2019 under IMDb, but there's no set date for this film to come out, which is my biggest concern. I hope within the next couple of months we'll hear you've got a November or a December release date. I think that's the best thing that it could have going for it in terms of a release. But as of right now, we don't know when it's coming out. That being said, with, as I was saying earlier, the group of Oscar voters that there is, this is like their chocolate cake. They are going to eat this shit up. You are looking at a Scorsese film starring the people that are going to make Oscar voters feel young again. They're going to go, I remember voting for De Niro, I remember voting for Pacino, Pesci, Keitel, all of these guys who are making their returns, their Academy favorites, their Academy history, really, and they're all coming back in one room under the director that's pretty much brought them all their individual success, other than Pacino. And there's no way they're not casting votes for these guys in the acting categories, at the very least. I think if the film is as good as it should be, it'll be everywhere else. It's being written by Steve Zalian, who is, like, weirdly hit or miss. Like, in a year, he'll do Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and then do Exodus, Knights and Gods, Kings, and whatever the fuck that movie is. And then he'll jump to The Night Of, which was a very well-received miniseries. So he's fucking, like, all over the place. But he's oftentimes an Academy pickup in terms of a screenplay nomination when he really brings it. And I think Scorsese and him will work well together as director, writer. The only thing left to say about it is when will it come out. If I fucking see this release date and it's in September, I'm going to have a conniption. I will be pissed. I remember there was talk about it being a Netflix original. I don't think that's still the case. I looked up the production companies for this film, and Netflix was not listed, so I don't think that's true anymore. That was also a concern of mine, but now that's clearly no longer an issue with the success that Roma had last year. So not even, streaming isn't something we need to really be concerned about anymore. That's an issue of 2 years ago. But The Irishman is one to look out for. It's a biopic, it's a half a biopic, and it's going to be an original take on that with a cast that is just going to make the Academy fucking drool. So this is another one to be really looking out for and really one to go see when we finally figure out when the hell it's coming out. The last film I want to talk about, and this will be probably another kind of brief one like the first one, but is The Lighthouse, which I've been hearing about a lot more recently. I didn't even know what it was until it premiered at Cannes and received all these unbelievably strong reviews. It is getting loved by everybody who sees it. I'm seeing 5 stars all over the place for this movie. It's another period piece that seems to be shot beautifully. Looks like it's going to have production and costume design that's going to be beautiful. Hairstyling and makeup as well that looks fantastic. Really interesting and strong direction, probably pretty amazing writing. I'm shocked I hadn't heard of this. It's an A24 release, which is interesting. A24 has the ability to show up very strongly or not show up at all. They took Picture with Moonlight, they took a shit ton of nominations with Lady Bird, and last year they were pretty bare in terms of their appearance. 8th Grade didn't show up. First Reformed took a screenplay nomination, but there wasn't a whole lot of A24 last year. I looked up even Annapurna's distribution release, and there's not a whole lot from them that I see happening unless Booksmart manages to hold the amount of attention that it has right now, which I don't think it will, or Where'd You Go, Bernadette turns out to be really good, but I don't think that's the case. That thing keeps getting pushed back, and it doesn't look all that great, so we'll see about that. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what A24 will campaign, whether it be this film or something like The Last Black Man in San Francisco, or I don't know. I didn't really see anything else on their docket that I was like, yeah, that'll be something that they could really push for nominations with, other than The Farewell, which is the Awkwafina movie, and I know it's supposed to be good, but by God, if something with Awkwafina in it starts getting nominated for Oscars, I don't even know what I'm gonna fucking do. I think I might lose my mind. I shouldn't shit on it. I haven't seen it yet, but like I've seen everything else she's been in. So, but I think this one is an interesting one to look at for someone like Willem Dafoe, who people might start to go, hey, he might be due. It might be his time. In a time where he's been showing up a lot more frequently, even in roles that it sort of became unexpected for him to be nominated in, like At Eternity's Gate. This seems to be a film in which he could really be the center, he could really steal the show, and he could take away possibly even a win for this. I don't know. Maybe that's something to look to. Or even like Robert Pattinson in the supporting actor category. The Oscars love an underdog story. Robert Pattinson went from being like one of the most hated performers in like the most hated film franchise out there to being a highly respected actor who's proven himself capable of strong performances in something like Good Time or High Life, and is now being sought after by some of the best directors in Hollywood, like Christopher Nolan. Whether he could show up in a supporting actor nomination, I think, is also a really interesting question, but I think this is one to look out for if it keeps premiering at festivals. I don't know if this one has a release date either, but I assume with a Cannes release and the amount of attention it's receiving, it's going to want to be distributed before the end of the year, maybe in a nice time for Oscar nominations and in a spot for A24 to campaign it. My biggest worry with it is labeled under horror on IMDb. Horror is one of the genres it's listed as. It is... you have a better chance of winning the fucking Powerball than being nominated at the Oscars under Best Picture as a horror film. There have been 6 movies in Oscar history that have been nominated for Best Picture that are horror films. Since 2000, there were 3 of those, and they've been Get Out, Black Swan, and The Sixth Sense. And you could even argue like something like The Sixth Sense ain't even a horror film. I think that's fucking pushing it. I don't think that's a horror movie. But it's really tough to get in there as a horror film, especially in this short of a time span since the last one was done. So I don't know if it's possible. I think it's plausible to see it in certain categories, but popping up in something like Picture could be tough for it. It's one I'm keeping my eye on, and one I would suggest you keep your eye on as well. But that's it for Volume 1 of 2020 Oscar Contenders. I'm going to keep pushing these videos out, and eventually... probably by Volume 3, I will be shooting these in Boston, either in my dorm, in the Boston Common, or in whatever cool spot I can find. I want to keep releasing these, keep them kind of new and fresh when I get out there. I'm planning on releasing a review for Rocket Man when I see that next week, or I should say this week now. It's coming out on Thursday. I'll probably see it Friday. I think I have Godzilla tickets for Thursday. But that's one of the films that I did not talk about that is on the list that I'll talk about in the future. I think it's one that does need to be discussed, and I will do a review for it once I've seen it this weekend. Other than that, look forward to more Oscar coverage coming very soon. I'm going to try and get these more regularly. This is my last week of school, and then I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands to make videos. Thank you all for sticking with me through this slow period. I do appreciate it. They will become more frequent and more frequent as I get out of high school, get into the summer, and then I get into college. I think this is gonna be a lot more frequent. So thank you guys very much. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.